Hey, wow. Gosh, I wish I was with you guys. I wish I'd planned this day so long. I wish I was with you guys right now. I was planning to meet in the new space and just see so many different people and then this happened. I mean, I don't know if you've looked out the window, but it's snowing like crazy and it's icy and crazy and please stay home and we don't want anybody to at all jeopardize themselves. So but it also meant we canceled the meeting, which makes it hard on me because I had already planned something totally different. I mean, when Mary told me that about this experience, she said the choir, the music folks were going to, well, they were going to play that song by Pete Seeger. You know, last night I had the strangest dream I ever dreamed before. I mean, I don't know if you were singing it with me, but it goes like da 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 and put an end to war. So it's an anti-war song, right? It's a peace song, and I was going to talk about peace and all the, the crazy hippies and George Fox and Jesus and Buddha and get all the legends were in the mess. It was going to be a great message. And then Snowmageddon happened. I mean, it changed everything. It's sort of interesting. Whenever we would decide whether we would cancel a meeting or not, when it was snowing, it always seemed to snow on Saturday night or Sunday morning when I was there. And how we would decide whether we canceled or not, it would be like Carolyn or John or I don't know who, it would be somebody, and we would talk, and invariably the conversation would come up. If we're going to cancel a meeting, we need to send somebody to the meeting house to make sure that if anybody were to come to the meeting house, that there would be somebody there who would let them know hey, we're not having a meeting today. And it was invariably me because I live fairly close to the meeting house. That I offered to walk to the meeting house and let anybody know. And it's so amazing. I live so close to the meeting. I almost never walked unless it snowed because I couldn't help it. I had to. And so I would walk to the meeting house. And it's amazing when you're walking to a place that you normally drive, you realize why you should walk more often. All the things you notice that you didn't notice before. And it was this lovely walk with woods and houses, and I would get to the meeting house, and you would think that the meeting house was, it's on Rinaldo Road, so it's always busy and loud, but when you were there when it snowed, it was so quiet. And I would invariably get there, and there wouldn't really be anybody there, and I'd check on things. And I remember I'd go to the edge of the woods there. If you remember, there were some woods there. And it would be on Sunday morning in the snow, I would just sort of listen to the silence and let the peace of that moment overcome me. And it was so holy and so sacred. Snow is a funny thing. It's a funny thing. I mean, do you remember your first snow? This is normally when I would ask a question like, do you remember your first snow? And somebody would say somebody. But I'll ask you right now, do you remember your first snow? What do you remember of the flakes? Was it icy, fluffy? What happened that day? The very first day that I remember snow was when I was maybe like 7 or 8. I think it was. I wasn't older than that, 7 or 8 or so. See, I lived in Chattanooga, Tennessee, which is, I don't know if you're familiar with it, it's sort of a tropical climate. And it rarely ever gets snow. I mean, maybe every few years we'll get a little dust or two. But I remember I was 7 or 8, and we got about 7, 8, 9, 10, I don't know, many inches of snow for the very first time in my life. And I remember being so excited and so unbelieving. If you've never seen snow and you see it for the first time, wow. I'll tell you some of the things I remember. I remember we got these sleds from my friend Bob, and we slid down his driveway, and it is so steep and it goes so long. I mean, you literally get up to about 3,000 miles an hour, probably faster. I mean, it is so, you'll never see the earth move so quickly. And I remember having the biggest smile on my face. I remember somebody showed me how to do those angels. You know how you do it, and getting up and looking, and there was it looked just like an angel. But the highlight of the experience, I remember, I got to share this, the highlight, were I remember that Mr. and Mrs. Mittensworth. There were a couple. Well, they were husband and wife, or snowman and snow wife. And they had a couple little snow kids that were piles of snow. But we didn't really do a lot with the kids, but with the Mr. Mittensworth, he had a funny floppy hat that he would wear. And we gave him a pipe, but it was really a pencil. And I remember they both had branches, but Mrs. Mittensworth would always have this straw hat on, and we gave her gloves and stuff, like gardening gloves. I mean, she really loved to garden. She had a green thumb. You could really see it on her thumb. It was green. And I remember, sometimes you do things with snow, but that first snow, we just made it so perfect. They were so completely carved with love and with life and such. I mean, if you looked at them, we filled them with so much of our love and heart that if you looked at them, if you squinted just right, if you were to just imagine, maybe cock your head in a funny angle, you would swear that they were real. Did you ever snowman like that? You literally put every button in, and I remember we put cherry tomatoes in for the eyes. And you swear that they were real. And then slowly, maybe a day or two later, you'd come back to the snowman and you'd see he wasn't quite as sturdy as he was before. I mean, it was the kids first. Eventually, they just sort of turned it into mounds of ice. And then Mrs. Mittensworth, well, she lost a glove. And one of her little cherry tomato eye popped out, and we tried to replace it with an orange, but it never was the same. Until in a week or so, all we had left was about a pile of ice and some old wet clothes and rotten vegetables. And I remember as we sort of watched them melt, it just sort of melted and broke your own heart. As these creations, these beautiful things were gone. It's a little bit like my hospice patients. I don't know if you know what I do now. I work for Novant as a chaplain in a lot of different scenarios, in hospitals and for the hospice in Charlotte and in Salisbury. And it's interesting, with the hospitals, you don't know really your patients. They come in, they're maybe there for a few days, and then they're now in critical condition. But with the hospice patients, it's a little different. Often with my patients, hospice patients, I don't really get to meet them directly. I will see them in their bed. But it's too late for introductions. And often I have conversations with their family members, the people gathered around that bedside. And I talk with them, and they tell me of the decline of the person that they love. Usually something happened, let's say 3 or 5 or 7 years ago. Something happened like a heart attack or a stroke, maybe it was cancer. And they never really recovered after that. Not really. And then slowly but surely, they declined and declined. Until one hospital event or another, here they are. You know, I have a dear friend who just passed away. Her name's Lynn. She's my mom's best friend in the world. They have been best friends for 40 years, since I was a very little kid. I think I've known her since I was 3 years old. She's a beautiful person who owned many bookstores and thousands of books, and was just a delightful person that my mother loved dearly. They went around the world together. And yet this past week, I think it was Tuesday morning, she passed away. We don't really know what happened. She was in hospice, but they just found her in her sleep. She's 75 years old. But 10 years ago, Lynn had a stroke. And she was never really the same after that. She just sort of declined. And one day, she didn't wake up. I was talking to my brother about that, twin brother. We were talking about, what does that mean, you know? What does that mean to live your life like that and to... I mean, at the end, it's just nothing. It doesn't... What does it signify? Nothing. He's a bit of a nihilist or a nihilist or one of those words that means it's just all nothing. I never figured out that. I got to ask Dave and T which one that is. But I couldn't really go there. I couldn't really follow him too much because I knew something, that even in the midst of this experience of this life, there were moments that, like I remember Lynn would wink at me, or she'd tell me a funny joke, or she'd make me smile. And those moments that we share with people, with friends and lovers and spouses and the people in our lives that are meaningful, there is something in those moments that are real. Maybe a terrible word for it is magic. Something that reminds us that this life is more than just these heap of bones or lots of books that we leave behind. There's something else. You know, when I started this message pretty recently, I guess last night, as I realized we were going to get Snowmageddon, I looked how many times the word snow is used in the Bible. I think we should be a little biblical here. And so if you really were to look, the word snow is used in the Bible around 23 times in the Bible. 23. If that's sort of a factoid that will help you somewhere in this crazy world, please have it. Now, most of the time when snow is mentioned, it's very descriptive. It means like somebody was so ill they were white as snow, or something as white as snow. I mean, sometimes it's described as something like a soul or a people were very white like snow, and then through the dirt and decay and the soot of life, they've become dirty. I mean, they started off like snow white and then became this. But there's not really clarity so much. You know, they do describe Jesus as having hair as white as snow. His beard and hair were white as snow. That's in Revelation. And it's interesting to think about, why would Jesus have white hair? He was a pretty young dude. Is it because he was so pure, or was it because was he so worried? I mean, I think it's because we literally gave him gray hair. I mean, Jesus had it rough, you know. He had a lot of people to take care of. Either way. Anyway, so I was really flummoxed about how to tie this all together. You know, the Bible really isn't very clear on snow. It doesn't really, just not very clear. I was doing this, and so I'm sort of trapped here with Rachel, my girlfriend, and her children. And I wanted to think of something to tie it all together. So I was reading these Bible passages, and as I read them, Rachel said something. It's interesting. I'm going to read this. This is from Isaiah chapter 55, and it discusses snow. For as the rain and the snow come down from heaven, and do not return there without watering the earth, and make it bear fruit and sprout vegetables, and furnishing seed to the sower and bread to the eater, so will my word by which goes forth from my mouth. It will not return to me empty, without accomplishing what I desire, and without succeeding in the matter for which I sent it. Here, I'm going to read it again. It's so pretty. It's so pretty. For as the rain and the snow come down from the heaven, and do not return there without watering the earth, and making it bear and sprout, and furnishing seed to the sower, and bread to the eater, so will my word by which goes forth from my mouth. It will not return to me empty, without accomplishing what I desire, and without succeeding in the matter for which I sent it. Now, I was reading this to Rachel and her kids, and you know, I didn't really think about it much, but Rachel said something. She said, you know what, I realized something. You know, we are all snowmen. We're all snowmen. And I said, what? What do you mean we're all snowmen? Snowmen? She said, we're all snowmen. She said, snowmen melt. They water the earth, which runs to the rivers, which goes to the ocean, back to the air, which returns here in snow and ice and rain to make the next snowman for next year. See, the snowmen never die. They melt, and they return to the earth, and they make the next snowman. And such is our spirit and the nature of our life, to give our gifts, to share our love and our spirit, only for those gifts to be returned to this world in love and in the spirits of those who come after. And I was like blown away. I was like, wow, Rachel, that is amazing. I was like, why aren't you a minister? That's incredible. And she said, well, I'm Catholic. But what a truly beautiful thing to say and to know. And we go forward with that knowledge in our life, knowing that we are all snowmen, all of us, Mr. and Mrs. Mittensworth. But rather than tremble or rage about the fact that we're going to lose some branch arms, some of the rotten tomatoes will fall out of us, rather than rage about that, let us be confident and brave with love and courage, awaiting the sun's warming rays, knowing we will water the earth for the next generation with our spirit and our love. God bless you. Be safe, well, and warm.